The Ice Age was not just a chapter in the story of the Earth. It was a stage upon which humanity's greatest struggle for survival was fought. Imagine a world where towering walls of ice carved valleys, rivers froze into silence, and bitter winds swept across open plains without mercy. The land was a vast desert of snow, stretching further than the eye could see. Winters were not measured in months, but in lifetimes, and the cold itself became the most relentless predator our ancestors ever faced. For the cavemen who lived during these times, every sunrise was a fragile promise, and every sunset a reminder that another freezing night had to be endured. The glaciers of the Ice Age reshaped entire continents. Massive sheets of ice pressed down on forests and hills, crushing them under their weight. Mountains gleamed with perpetual frost, and valleys became corridors of deadly wind. Animals that survived here were armored by nature itself. Woolly mammoths cloaked in thick fur, giant bison with heavy coats, and predators with long fangs and claws sharpened by hunger. But humans were different. They had no fur, no claws, no great physical strength to protect them. Against this endless winter, the human body seemed almost laughably weak. And yet, somehow they endured. To understand the daily lives of cavemen, we must first understand the climate they were up against. The cold was not a simple inconvenience. It was a force that seeped into every part of life. It froze rivers that once gave water, buried plants under layers of snow, and sent prey animals into migration or hibernation. Food became scarce, and water itself was locked in ice. Even breathing in the open air could be painful, as freezing winds sliced into the lungs. Every step outside meant exposing oneself to frostbite, hypothermia, or predators drawn by the scent of weakness. Survival was never guaranteed. The Ice Age world was full of contrasts. The days, though short and dim, offered some reprieve, a faint sun struggling to cut through heavy clouds. But the nights were a realm of terror. Darkness fell quickly, and temperatures plunged to levels that could kill within hours. Imagine a small band of humans huddled inside a cave, the fire flickering low, shadows stretching across the stone walls. Outside, the winds howled like spirits, and in the distance, wolves cried out into the night. Inside, the warmth of a fragile flame became a fortress, and silence was broken only by whispers or the crackle of burning wood. Between the stone walls of their shelters and the fragile glow of fire, these early humans carried a thin line between life and death. The challenges of this frozen world were not just physical but psychological. To wake each morning knowing that hunger, cold, or predators could claim you before nightfall demanded resilience almost unimaginable to us today. The mind of the caveman was trained by necessity. Every choice, where to camp, when to hunt, how to conserve firewood, was weighed against the unforgiving laws of nature. A mistake meant suffering, and suffering often meant death. But this constant threat also forged something new in humanity: creativity, adaptability, and a sense of community that would define us forever. The landscape was not always uniform. There were moments of fragile beauty in this world of ice. Snow sparkled under the pale sun. Rivers cracked open in spring to release their rushing waters, and herds of animals thundered across the plains in their seasonal migrations. These rare moments of abundance gave hope, but they never lasted long. The cycle of winter always returned, heavier and colder, reminding humans that the Ice Age was not a season but an era, a permanent companion. And so, in this world of endless winter, humanity learned to adapt. The cave became more than a shelter. It was a womb of survival, a place where fire and family gave protection against the cold. The hunt was no longer only about food. It was about securing furs and bones that could be fashioned into tools and clothing. Fire was not just warmth, it was life, and with every spark struck from flint, humans carried the flame of survival forward. To picture the beginning of human endurance is to imagine these scenes. Small groups of men, women, and children moving across snowy plains, their footprints trailing behind them in the frost. Hunters creeping through icy forests, spears clutched tight in trembling hands. Elders whispering stories in the glow of firelight, reminding the young why they must keep going. This was the world that tested humanity. This was the crucible where weakness was burned away and strength, not of body but spirit, became the greatest tool for survival. In many ways, the endless winter was both an enemy and a teacher. It forced humans to look beyond instinct, to create tools, shelters, and strategies that no other species had imagined. The woolly mammoth had its fur. The cave bear had its strength. But humans had their minds, and in the frozen silence of the Ice Age, that mind became the most powerful weapon of all. Thus begins our journey into the life of cavemen. How they fought the cold, how they found food in barren lands, how they built shelters from bones and hides, and how they gathered each night to share warmth, stories, and courage. The Ice Age was a world of endless winter, but within it, the story of humanity's resilience was written one spark, one shelter, one heartbeat at a time. When we look back at the cavemen of the Ice Age, it's tempting to imagine them as hardened giants, fearless hunters, impervious to pain, built to withstand the frozen winds. But the truth was far more delicate, far more human. Their bodies were fragile, vulnerable to the same cold that makes us shiver today. Unlike the beasts they hunted and feared, they were not armored by nature with thick hides, fur, or insulating fat. The human body, stripped of tools and fire, was an easy victim in a world designed to punish weakness. This was the great paradox of our ancestors. Fragile bodies, yet a will to survive that proved mightier than any natural weapon. Consider the animals of that era. The woolly mammoth carried a shaggy coat of dense fur, layers of fat beneath its skin, and massive tusks to fend off predators. The cave bear hibernated through the coldest months, relying on its size and stored fat reserves. Even the wolves and saber-toothed cats had thick pelts, sharp claws, and instincts honed over countless generations. In contrast, humans stood nearly naked against the cold, their skin exposed, their muscles small, and their teeth and nails blunt. To step into the same frozen landscapes as these animals seemed like walking into certain death. And yet, somehow, humanity endured where so many creatures fell. The greatest enemy was not always the predator lurking in the shadows. It was the cold itself. Frostbite could claim fingers, toes, even entire limbs. Hypothermia crept in silently, slowing the heart, clouding the mind, and lulling its victim into a sleep they would never wake from. For a caveman, exposure to the night without fire or shelter meant death within hours. Their skin, so poorly insulated, offered no protection against icy winds. Their bodies, smaller compared to beasts of prey, burned energy quickly, demanding constant fuel in the form of food. Without it, starvation weakened the body further, leaving men, women, and children helpless against the climate's cruelty. This weakness, however, also became the root of human strength. Because their bodies could not survive alone, they were forced to adapt in other ways. Unlike the mammoth, humans could not grow fur, but they could strip the hides of animals and wear them as clothing. Unlike the cave bear, they could not hibernate, but they could store food and prepare for months of scarcity. Unlike wolves, their claws were dull, but in their hands, stone tools became sharper than any tooth. In every weakness, humans found a way to build strength. It was as if nature's denial of physical defenses pushed them toward invention and cooperation. The contrasts of life were brutal. Imagine the hunter returning from a failed hunt, his body trembling with cold, hands stiff and nearly useless. He knows that a fall asleep without fire is to never wake again. In another part of the clan, a child cries from hunger, her small frame weaker than the icy winds outside. Yet beside them, an elder sits quietly by the fire, telling stories of the hunt and teaching the young where to find shelter, where to strike a beast, where to seek water when the rivers turn to ice. Here lies the paradox of humanity. Fragile flesh, but a mind capable of building memory, passing knowledge, and creating strategies to outwit the challenges of nature. Even the simplest acts became struggles of survival. Gathering water meant cracking ice from frozen rivers or melting snow by fire. Cooking meat was not a luxury but a necessity, because raw food drained energy the body could not afford to lose. Carrying infants required wrapping them in animal furs and holding them close to the warmth of the body, for the slightest chill could steal their lives. The clan could not afford carelessness, because one mistake could ripple into tragedy for all. But in this crucible of fragility, the bonds of community grew. No single person could stand against the elements. Hunters depended on gatherers, children depended on elders, and all depended on fire. The very fact that humans were weak forced them to build strong social ties, to share warmth, food, and knowledge. While animals survived on instinct alone, humans survived by cooperation, and this became their greatest weapon. The world around them was a constant reminder of what they lacked. They watched predators move with silent grace, watched mammoths endure blizzards with ease, and must have wondered why nature had left them so defenseless. Yet they also saw the cracks in this perfection. Predators starved when prey was scarce. Mammoths grew too large to hide, too slow to adapt. Strength in one area often became weakness in another. Humans, fragile though they were, had something no other creature possessed: the ability to adapt endlessly, to bend and reshape the world around them instead of submitting to it. Thus, the story of humanity in the Ice Age is not one of brute force, but a survival against all odds. The cold tore at their skin, predators stalked their camps, hunger hollowed their bodies. But through it all, they learned to endure. Their fragility was undeniable, yet was matched by a mighty resilience. This tension between weakness and strength defined their existence. It was never easy, never guaranteed, but each victory against cold, each fire kept alive through the night, was proof that their spirit was stronger than their flesh. To truly appreciate the journey of the cavemen, we must carry this image with us: a species so vulnerable that by all rights it should have vanished, yet so resourceful that it endured. Their challenges were mighty, their bodies fragile, but in this fragile frame burned beginnings of humanity's most powerful legacy: the will to survive, to create, and to overcome. For the cavemen of the Ice Age, fire was not just a tool. It was the single most important force standing between life and death. In a world where nights could freeze rivers solid and winds howled like blades through bone and skin, fire was salvation. Without it, no human being could have endured the endless winters. It was warmth, light, protection, and hope, all contained in the flicker of a flame. Imagine a night without fire. Darkness falls quickly, swallowing the land in black silence. The cold bites into the skin, spreading deeper with each minute, until even breath feels like shards of ice. The clan huddles together, bodies press for warmth, but the chill seeps in from all sides. Outside, predators lurk, guided by senses far keener than human eyes. A wolf's growl echoes in the distance. A cave lion prowls near the entrance of a shelter. Without fire, there is no barrier, no warning, no defense. It is in these moments that fire transforms from a luxury into the very essence of survival. But fire was never easy to come by. Unlike today, when a spark is only a flick away, for Ice Age humans the act of creating flame was a sacred struggle. Sometimes fire was stolen from nature itself. Lightning striking a dry tree, a smoldering branch left behind after a storm, or the embers of a grass fire set ablaze by summer heat. These natural flames were precious, guarded with care, for they could mean survival through the next brutal winter. Families carried glowing embers wrapped in moss, bark, or animal dung, keeping the fire alive as they migrated from one place to another. Losing it meant desperation, for without fire, every plan for warmth, food, and safety collapsed. Over time, however, humans learned to create fire themselves. Sparks struck from flint against iron pyrite. Dry tinder gathered from moss, bark, or bone dust. Bow drills and hand drills, where wooden shafts spun rapidly to generate friction, coaxed the first wisps of smoke into existence. To strike a spark, to see it catch on dry grass and grow into flame, was nothing short of a miracle. Entire clans celebrated this moment. It was not just an act of survival. It was proof of human mastery over nature. Fire was no longer a gift of the gods or a random chance. It was something humans could summon with their own hands. With fire, a world of possibility opened. It provided warmth in caves and shelters, turning icy tombs into safe havens. It lit the darkness, pushing back the predators who feared the flames. Meat once eaten raw could now be roasted, making it easier to chew, safer from parasites, and more nourishing. Bones became tools when hardened in fire, hides became softer when treated with heat, and stones fractured into sharper blades. Fire was not only warmth, it was technology, the cornerstone of human advancement. The social power of fire was just as important as its practical uses. It became the center of community. When the sun fell and the bitter cold wrapped the world in silence, clans gathered around the flames. There, the young learned from the old. Hunters told of their struggles, and shamans whispered stories of spirits and ancestors. Fire turned fear into courage, loneliness into belonging. The circle around the flames was more than a gathering. It was the foundation of human culture itself. The firelight was a stage, and in that circle, humanity began to define itself as something greater than mere survival. But fire was also fragile. A sudden gust of wind, a rainstorm, or careless neglect could snuff it out. Entire groups lived with the constant anxiety of losing their flame. To protect it, they built stone circles, covered embers with ash, and passed the responsibility of fire-keeping to the most trusted members of the clan. A single glowing coal was treated as treasure, guarded more closely than food or tools. In many ways, fire became sacred. Some archaeologists believe the reverence we see in cave rituals and burial practices may have roots in this. Fire as a divine presence, a spirit that lived alongside humanity. The contrast of life with and without fire was absolute. With it, warmth, light, safety, and nourishment. Without it, only darkness, hunger, and fear. In this contrast, we see how fragile humans truly were, and yet how powerful their ingenuity became. Fire was not simply a resource. It was a companion. It breathed, grew, and died. It demanded constant feeding, constant attention, and in return it gave life. For early humans, keeping fire alive was much like caring for another member of the clan. It is difficult for us, living in a world of electric lights and controlled heating, to imagine what fire truly meant in those days. But to a caveman, the glow of flames was the most reassuring sight in the world. It was proof that they had conquered, if only for one more night, the endless winter pressing against the walls of their shelter. It was a sound of crackling wood instead of the growl of wolves. It was a dance of light against stone walls instead of the creeping shadows of predators. Fire was hope embodied. This salvation shaped the course of human evolution. It gave warmth, but more importantly, it gave time. Time to talk, to plan, to dream. Around the fire, humans became storytellers, philosophers, artists. It is no accident that the oldest cave paintings in the world were made in places where firelight could illuminate the walls. Fire extended the day into the night, and with those hours came culture, imagination, and the beginnings of what we call humanity itself. Thus, the story of cavemen cannot be told without fire. It was a shield that guarded them from cold and predators, the tool that transformed raw food into nourishment, the stage upon which the first human stories were told. It was both fragile and powerful, both dangerous and life-saving. Fire was the ultimate paradox, something humans could create, yet never fully control. And so, as the endless winter stretched on, fire burned not only in the caves and shelters of the Ice Age, but also in the hearts of those who refused to surrender to the cold. In the unforgiving winters of the Ice Age, fire alone could not guarantee survival. A flame without protection was fleeting. A hunter without shelter was exposed to death. Shelter was not merely comfort. It was a fortress, a womb, a carefully constructed barrier between humans and a world designed to destroy them. For early humans, the act of building or finding shelter was as critical as hunting or keeping fire alive. It was life itself, wrapped in stone, bone, or hides. Caves were the first natural fortresses for humans. Deep recesses in the rock offered protection from wind, snow, and predators. The temperature inside a cave could be significantly warmer than the outside air, sometimes providing a stable environment where frostbite was less likely and small fires could maintain warmth throughout the night. Yet, caves were far from perfect. Predators such as cave bears or saber-toothed cats often claimed them first. Humans had to carefully choose their shelters, sometimes living in small, dangerous spaces alongside lingering threats, learning patience and vigilance as a matter of survival. When natural caves were unavailable, cavemen became ingenious builders. Mammoth bones, arranged carefully and covered with hides, formed the first true man-made huts. These structures were marvels of adaptation. The bones acted as a skeleton, giving shape and stability, while the hides provided insulation. Moss, grass, and animal furs were stuffed between gaps to keep wind and snow out. These early shelters were small, but each square foot was a testament to human innovation. A family could survive the harshest blizzard within a structure that, at first glance, looked almost impossibly fragile, yet could endure the forces of nature. The architecture of survival, extended even further. Snow pits, hollowed into deep drifts, provided insulation far beyond what stone or bone alone could achieve. The principle was simple: packed snow traps air, and trapped air traps heat. Cavemen would dig deep, creating semi-subterranean spaces lined with furs or moss. Inside, the cold became bearable. Outside, the storm raged without mercy. But within these icy burrows, life continued. Each shelter was a careful negotiation with nature, an understanding of how materials, shapes, and positioning could turn the harshest environment into a livable space. The placement of shelters was as important as their construction. Clans sought natural windbreaks, proximity to water sources that were not fully frozen, and hunting grounds rich with prey. They observed the land, noting patterns of wind, snow drift, and predator movement. Choosing where to sleep could mean the difference between warmth and frostbite, between life and death. In this way, shelter was not just structure. It was strategy, a vital chapter in the ongoing story of survival. The interior of shelters was also a carefully managed space. Fire pits were placed strategically to maximize warmth and minimize smoke inhalation. Sleeping areas were lined with layered furs to insulate against the cold stone or frozen ground. Food and tools were stored close at hand to reduce dangerous exposure to the cold when they were needed. Even in the simplest cave or snow pit, humans created microenvironments, safe zones against chaos, spaces where body heat, fire, and communal living combined to create security. Shelters were social spaces as much as they were protective. In the flickering shadows cast by firelight, families gathered. Children were kept close to elders, learning the skills of survival: how to recognize dangerous weather, how to preserve meat, how to fashion furs into clothing. Stories were shared, plans for hunting or migration discussed, and strategies for facing predators rehearsed in quiet conversations. Shelter was both physical protection and social nucleus, the place where survival strategies were passed from one generation to the next. The contrasts in this world were stark. Outside, the wind could slice through bare skin. Snow could bury an unprepared human within minutes, and predators roamed freely. Inside, the walls of stone, bone, or packed snow, along with fire and the warmth of community, offered life and safety. Each night spent inside a well-constructed shelter was a triumph, a temporary victory over an indifferent and dangerous world. And yet, this safety required constant effort. Furs needed mending, fires needed feeding, and shelters required reinforcement after storms. Survival was an active process, not a passive state. The ingenuity of shelters also reveals the broader human mindset, adaptability, and foresight. Animals survived mostly through instinct, relying on the physical tools nature gave them. Humans, with fragile bodies, had to invent solutions to survive. By creating shelters, they reshaped their environment. They turned caves into homes, snow into insulation, and bones into frameworks. In doing so, they demonstrated that human survival was not simply a matter of strength or speed. It was intelligence, creativity, and communal cooperation. In extreme storms, these shelters were tested. Blizzards could last for days, temperatures dropping to life-threatening lows. Yet, the best shelters allowed humans to ride out these storms, to emerge alive and capable. The triumph of survival was not in the absence of danger, but in the ability to endure it. This endurance, refined night after night, season after season, became embedded in the human psyche. It taught lessons about patience, resource management, and cooperation, lessons that would echo throughout the evolution of our species. By combining fire, careful location, construction skills, and communal living, humans created sanctuaries in a hostile landscape. Every shelter, whether a cave lined with moss or a hut of bones and hides, was a statement of human determination. That even the coldest, darkest night could be met with warmth, security, and hope. Shelters were the stage upon which life, culture, and civilization began to emerge. Without them, the story of humanity in the Ice Age might never have been written. Thus, the act of creating shelter was not merely survival. It was a defiance of nature itself. It was a first step toward controlling one's environment, the first step toward transforming vulnerability into resilience. In the endless winter, shelters were the wombs of life, the quiet triumphs that allowed humans to endure, adapt, and ultimately flourish against the cold. In the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, hunger was a constant companion. Unlike the abundant summers, winter brought scarcity in every form. Rivers froze, vegetation disappeared under thick snow, and prey animals migrated or hibernated. For cavemen, finding food during these months was not a choice. It was a daily battle against starvation. Every meal was a test of ingenuity, endurance, and cooperation. The struggle for sustenance shaped the very rhythms of life, dictating movement, social structures, and even the timing of rituals and hunts. The first challenge was understanding what could be eaten. In a landscape blanketed by snow, many plants were buried or destroyed by frost. Roots, tubers, and any remaining fruits were dug from frozen soil, often requiring hours of labor in sub-zero temperatures. Nuts and seeds stored during warmer months became critical, their calories precious and irreplaceable. Humans learned to preserve food for these harsh months, drying meat over fires, smoking fish, and storing roots in insulated pits beneath moss or snow. These strategies were not just clever, they were necessary. One failed winter could lead to death for many members of a clan. Hunting, the cornerstone of survival, became far more dangerous and difficult during winter. Prey animals were fewer and more cautious, driven by hunger themselves into treacherous behaviors. Mammoths, reindeer, and bison move in herds, often covering hundreds of miles in search of food. Hunters needed to track these migrations, understand animal behavior, and plan ambushes that could last days. One miscalculation could cost not only the hunt but human life, as exposure to cold and fatigue weakened even the strongest hunter. The balance between risk and reward was constant, and only those who mastered patience, observation, and strategy thrived. Winter diets were often a mix of hunted meat and gathered sustenance. Large mammals provided calories, fat, and warmth, as their hides and bones could be turned into clothing and tools. But smaller prey, like rabbits, birds, and fish, became critical supplements, requiring different techniques and tools. Fishing through holes in frozen rivers, snaring small animals, and even scavenging from predator kills were essential survival tactics. Each source of food demanded specialized knowledge. A human who understood how to locate edible plants beneath snow, track animal prints, or extract marrow from frozen bones held an advantage that could mean life over death. Preservation became an art. Unlike modern refrigeration, Ice Age humans relied on natural cold, smoke, and drying to store food for days, weeks, or months. Meat was suspended near fires to prevent freezing, but dry enough to avoid spoilage. Fish were salted when possible or smoked over low flames. Roots and tubers were packed in insulating layers of moss or buried under snow to maintain temperature. These methods allowed food to last longer than the human body could, and every successful preservation strategy was a lifeline through the harsh months. Yet, the scarcity of food brought another challenge: rationing. Clans needed to share resources carefully, balancing hunger with energy expenditure. A poorly fed hunter could collapse during a hunt, leaving the entire group vulnerable. Children and elders, weaker than the average adult, required protection and extra care. The social dynamics around food became deeply intertwined with survival strategies. Hunger was a motivator, but it also demanded empathy, planning, and sometimes difficult choices when resources were limited. The psychological burden of hunger was as real as the physical one. Cold, exhaustion, and scarcity combined to create constant stress. The fear of starvation hung over each day and night, shaping behavior and thought. In these conditions, success in finding food was celebrated intensely. Cooked meat, a handful of roots, or a dried fish became treasures. The joy of a meal after days of scarcity strengthened social bonds and reinforced communal living. In the Ice Age, food was more than sustenance. It was a heartbeat of survival, the measure of human ingenuity, and a source of hope against overwhelming odds. Fat became one of the most critical resources of all. In the cold, fat was not just nutrition. It was insulation and energy storage. Hunters prioritized animals with thick layers of fat, understanding instinctively that these calories could fuel their bodies through freezing nights and long treks. Fat from mammoths, seals, or reindeer could be consumed directly or used to grease tools and clothing, extending their utility. This intimate knowledge of nutrition and resource use demonstrates the early humans' remarkable adaptation to extreme environments. The struggle for food also shaped migration and settlement patterns. Clans moved following herds, sometimes crossing vast distances to find grazing grounds or frozen rivers teeming with fish. Winter survival dictated travel routes, shelter locations, and hunting strategies. Each clan became intimately attuned to the rhythms of nature. When rivers froze, when winds shifted, when animals gathered in valleys or highlands. Survival depended on reading these subtle cues and making rapid, sometimes life-or-death decisions based on them. Culinary techniques themselves were sophisticated. Roasting meat over fire not only made it edible, but also safer from parasites and easier to digest. Bone marrow, rich in fat and nutrients, was extracted and shared. Plants were prepared carefully to avoid toxic parts, and sometimes chemical or mechanical processes, like grinding or soaking, enhanced their nutritional value. These practices show that even in a world dominated by cold and scarcity, humans sought not only to survive, but to optimize life wherever possible. The contrast between abundance and scarcity defined life in the Ice Age. Summers might offer plenty, with plants, berries, and active herds of prey animals. But winter stripped away security, exposing the raw struggle of survival. The joy of finding food was matched by the ever-present fear of hunger. Each meal became a victory, each day a negotiation with nature. In these months, humans learned patience, observation, strategy, and cooperation, skills that would become cornerstones of human culture. In the end, winter diets were more than nutrition. They were survival strategies, cultural practices, and lessons in resilience. Every root dug from frozen soil, every spear thrown at a wary mammoth, every preserved fish or roasted marrow bone represented the ingenuity, determination, and cooperation that allowed humans to endure one of the harshest climates in history. The struggle for food was relentless, but through it, the seeds of adaptation, community, and innovation were sown, setting the stage for generations of humans who would continue to thrive long after the Ice Age ended. In the frozen expanses of the Ice Age, the hunt for large prey was more than a necessity. It was a test of courage, skill, and survival instinct. Among all creatures, the woolly mammoth was both the prize and the ultimate challenge. These towering beasts, armored with thick fur and strong muscles, could weigh up to 6 tons, their tusks curved like scythes. To face one was to confront the raw power of nature itself. Yet for early humans, a successful hunt meant food, clothing, tools, and warmth, resources that could sustain a clan through the harshest winters. The mammoth hunt was the pinnacle of winter survival strategy, and it carried the highest risks and rewards. The hunt began long before the first spear was thrown. Hunters observed the herds, learning their patterns and behaviors over days or even weeks. Tracks in snow, droppings, and feeding marks provided critical clues. Every detail mattered. The position of the herd, the wind direction, the presence of predators. A single miscalculation, a wrong step, a snapped branch, or a startled animal, could turn a planned hunt into catastrophe. The stakes were not just hunger but life itself. A wounded mammoth could kill multiple hunters in moments, and the cold could sap energy faster than wounds could heal. Coordination and cooperation were vital. Mammoth hunts were not solitary endeavors. They required teams of skilled hunters, often working in silence, communicating through gestures and practice signals. Some groups developed strategies to drive herds into natural traps, frozen rivers, steep valleys, or ambush zones where the animal's massive size became a disadvantage. Spears, often tipped with stone or bone, were wielded with precision, and hunters approached in ways that minimized risk while maximizing impact. The hunt was as much a mental challenge as a physical one, demanding patience, calculation, and nerves of steel. The danger was ever present. Mammoths could crush a man with a single step, gore with their tusks, or charge unexpectedly when threatened. Their thick fur and fat made penetrating the skin with primitive weapons difficult. Hunters knew that one misstep could result in death, not just for themselves, but for their companions. Yet this danger was part of the thrill and the necessity. The higher the risk, the greater the reward. A single mammoth provided meat, fat, hides, and bones sufficient to sustain a clan for months. Every ounce harvested meant warmth, nutrition, and tools for the long winter. The hunt was also a social event, a defining moment for clan. Successful hunters earned respect and authority, while failures could weaken group morale. Children and elders often observed from safe distances, learning not only the techniques but the strategies, patience, and respect required for such dangerous undertakings. The hunt became a school of survival, a place where knowledge was passed down, and where courage and skill were tested against nature's mightiest adversary. Preparation for the hunt extended beyond weapons. Hunters ensured they were well fed and insulated with furs to withstand hours or days in freezing conditions. Fire was kept ready to thaw frozen ground or cook portions of meat immediately after the kill. The wounded mammoth could be dangerous even after death. Its massive body could crush, and predators drawn by blood could threaten the clan. Every step, from tracking to kill to butchering, required careful planning and collective effort. Survival was always a balance between ambition and caution. The aftermath of a successful hunt was transformative. Mammoth meat provided high-calorie nutrition, critical for surviving the winter. Fat could be rendered for warmth and cooking. Bones became frameworks for shelters, tools, and weapons, while hides became clothing, blankets, and insulation. A single hunt could elevate a clan's chance of surviving the cold months exponentially. This was the ultimate reward for courage and teamwork, a demonstration that risk, when calculated and executed with skill, could turn fragility into strength. Yet not all hunts ended in triumph. Injuries, exhaustion, or sudden storms could turn the pursuit into disaster. Some clans lost members to the very beasts they sought to kill, while others returned empty-handed to face hunger and cold. These failures were harsh lessons, teaching humility, respect for nature, and the importance of preparation and unity. The mammoth hunt was not only about sustenance. It was a school of life, where survival instincts were honed, strategies refined, and social bonds strengthened through shared danger and triumph. The hunt also carried spiritual significance. Many anthropologists believe rituals surrounded these hunts, from invoking animal spirits to honoring the mammoth after the kill. Cave paintings depicting mammoths, often with arrows or spears, suggest that these animals were more than food. They were symbols of power, endurance, and a precarious balance between life and death. The hunt fused the practical with the symbolic, reinforcing the social and cultural fabric of the clan. In the frozen plains, every successful mammoth hunt was a declaration of human ingenuity over nature's brute force. It showed that cooperation, strategy, and courage could overcome sheer size and strength. It reinforced the lessons of winter survival: patience, observation, skill, and respect for the environment. Each kill meant life continued for clan. Each failure reminded them of the fragility of human existence in a harsh, icy world. Ultimately, the mammoth hunt epitomized the Ice Age struggle. It was a highest-risk endeavor, demanding intellect, bravery, and unity. It carried profound rewards, offering food, warmth, tools, and knowledge critical for enduring the relentless winter. It was a microcosm of human survival, danger and opportunity, fear and courage, fragility and ingenuity. Through these hunts, early humans learned to transform the odds, mastering the environment not with brute strength, but with intelligence, teamwork, and resilience. The mammoth was both adversary and ally, challenge and reward, death and life intertwined in the harshest winter landscape imaginable. In the unforgiving world of the Ice Age, survival was not solely a matter of strength or courage. It was a matter of invention. Early humans had fragile bodies, no natural weapons, and little physical protection. Yet they thrived where larger, stronger animals could dominate. Their secret lay in tools. Stone, bone, wood, and sinew became extensions of the human body, transforming vulnerability into power, fragility into capability, and the cold, dangerous world into a navigable landscape of survival. The foundation of survival was stone. Flint, obsidian, and other hard rocks were carefully selected and shaped into blades, scrapers, and points. A flint spear could penetrate the thick hide of a mammoth. A stone scraper could strip meat from bone or process hides into clothing. These tools were not crude. They were carefully engineered for maximum efficiency. Early humans experimented with angles, weights, and edges, learning through trial and error how to make tools sharper, stronger, and more durable. Each tool was a triumph of intelligence over the limitations of flesh. Bone and antler were equally vital. Once an animal was hunted, every part could be repurposed. Bones became needles to sew hides into warm clothing, hooks to catch fish, or points for arrows and spears. Antlers were carved into hammers, wedges, or even ceremonial objects. Using these materials required dexterity, vision, and creativity. Humans had to see beyond the raw form of the bone or antler, imagining its potential as a tool or weapon. In doing so, they transformed the remains of prey into instruments of continued survival. Wood, although less durable in cold and wet conditions, played a crucial role. Shafts for spears, handles for axes, and structures for shelters all relied on carefully chosen timber. Even primitive bows could be crafted, giving hunters greater reach and speed. Fire itself was sparked using wooden drills and friction techniques, turning a simple resource into life-saving technology. The combination of wood, stone, and bone demonstrates how humans turn available materials into complex, multi-purpose survival systems. Every tool was also a lesson in adaptation. A knife shaped for cutting meat might be used differently in winter than in summer. Scrapers for hides needed to account for frozen surfaces. Spears had to balance weight for throwing versus penetration. Each season demanded subtle innovations, and humans responded with remarkable flexibility. This adaptability was crucial. While animals relied on instinct and physical design, humans relied on their intellect, constantly inventing and refining tools to meet the changing challenges of the Ice Age. The process of tool-making also shaped human cognition and society. Learning how to craft a tool required observation, memory, and patience. A novice could watch an elder strike flint against stone and gradually understand the delicate balance required to produce a sharp edge. Knowledge was passed down, refined, and shared. In essence, tools became carriers of culture, linking generations through practical wisdom. They were more than objects. They were symbols of human ingenuity and survival intelligence. Tools were also essential for cooperation. Hunting large animals required coordinated efforts using spears, traps, and clubs. Food processing depended on scrapers, knives, and grinders. Clothing, vital for warmth, depended on needles and bone awls. Without these instruments, a small clan could not survive the harshest winters. The most skilled tool makers gained prestige and influence, their creations extending the capabilities of everyone around them. The social dimension of tools, how they facilitated collaboration and hierarchy, is an early glimpse into the building of human culture. The ingenuity did not stop at survival. Tools enabled humans to manipulate their environment in subtle but powerful ways. Stones could shape wood, fire could harden bone, and shelters could be reinforced with carved supports. Humans could construct not just survival implements, but temporary architecture, weapons, and even ritual objects. Each innovation extended the limits of what humans could achieve, blurring the line between nature and human control. Perhaps most importantly, tools amplified the ability to face the cold. Stone scrapers turned hides into clothing and blankets, protecting against frostbite. Spears and bows allowed humans to hunt without risking close contact with predators. Fire-making implements ensured warmth even during the darkest nights. In every case, tools acted as extensions of human foresight, intellect, and adaptability. Fragile bodies became resilient, weak hands became capable of incredible precision, and humans could stand where other species could not. In the Ice Age, survival was never guaranteed, but tools transformed the odds. They were not merely practical objects. They were lifelines, instruments of strategy, and catalysts for social and cultural evolution. Each carefully shaped flint, each carved bone, and each crafted wooden shaft represented the triumph of human intelligence over the raw challenges of nature. In these tools, we see the essence of humanity, fragile, inventive, adaptable, and endlessly determined to survive. By mastering the materials around them, cavemen turned vulnerability into power. The world of stone, bone, became a playground of ingenuity. And in that mastery, humans discovered something profound. While nature could shape the body, intelligence could shape destiny. Tools were the bridge between life and death, weakness and strength, survival and extinction. They were the instruments that allowed humans not just to endure the Ice Age, but to thrive within it. In the Ice Age, survival was a delicate balance between cooperation and constant vigilance. For every step humans took toward warmth and safety, predators lurked just beyond the glow of the fire. Among the most intelligent and persistent of these predators were wolves. Silent, cunning, and highly social, wolves were both a threat and, over time, a potential ally. Understanding them, avoiding their attacks, and eventually learning to coexist marked a turning point in the survival of early humans. The wolf was a master of adaptation. Unlike larger predators like cave lions or bears, wolves relied on speed, strategy, and pack coordination to hunt. They could chase prey across vast, icy plains, tracking scents over frozen rivers and snow-covered forests. For a lone human, or even a small group, a wolf encounter could be deadly. A single wolf could intimidate or injure, while a coordinated pack could kill livestock, scavenge hunted game, or even threaten humans themselves. Every movement outside shelter carried this unseen danger, making vigilance and fire not just conveniences, but necessities for life. Yet wolves were also fascinatingly similar to humans in their social structure. Like human clans, they hunted in coordinated packs, communicated with vocalizations, and established hierarchies within the group. Early humans observing these animals would have recognized patterns of teamwork, strategy, and even empathy. These observations may have subtly influenced human hunting strategies and social cohesion. By studying wolves, humans learned valuable lessons: patience, cooperation, and importance of coordinated effort in the face of danger. The relationship between humans and wolves began as rivalry. Early humans would have fought to defend kills from scavenging wolves, guarding children and fire from nocturnal prowlers. Tracks in the snow, a sudden howl, or eyes gleaming at the edge of the firelight created fear that heightened awareness and sharpened instincts. Wolves tested the limits of human endurance, forcing early humans to refine weapons, create secure shelters, and develop strategies for hunting and protection. In essence, predators acted as teachers, imposing challenges that demanded adaptation and ingenuity. Over generations, however, humans and wolves began to form a tenuous bond. Some of the most daring humans observed the behavior of young or weak wolves, noticing their intelligence and curiosity. By feeding or tolerating certain individuals, humans began the long, slow process of domestication. These early interactions laid the groundwork for companionship, alert systems, and cooperative hunting. Wolves became sentinels, warning humans of approaching danger, tracking prey, or even assisting in the hunt. The once feared predator gradually transformed into an essential ally, demonstrating the power of observation, trust, and selective interaction. Predator pressure influenced not just human behavior, but also settlement patterns. Clans chose shelters with defensible positions, narrow entrances, or elevated vantage points to protect against wolf packs. Fires were maintained meticulously, both for warmth and as deterrents. Human communities learned to remain vigilant, especially at night, creating routines and systems that enhance safety. Wolves, by pressing humans to develop these strategies, indirectly shaped social organization, cooperation, and the rhythms of daily life. The duality of wolves as threats and allies mirrors the larger theme of the Ice Age. Life and death existed side by side, and every decision carried weight. A hunter deciding whether to leave a fire to pursue prey risked an encounter with predator. A parent venturing outside to gather firewood balanced nourishment against danger. The presence of wolves reinforced a lesson that would echo throughout human history. Survival depended not just on brute strength, but on awareness, intelligence, and social cooperation. Wolves also became part of the cultural and spiritual fabric of human life. Cave paintings frequently depict wolves alongside other animals, suggesting that humans revered or feared them as symbols of cunning, power, and resilience. These creatures were woven into stories, rituals, and perhaps even early mythologies. Firelight cast moving shadows on cave walls, and in those flickering images, humans could see reflections of both predator and kinship, danger and opportunity, fear and respect. The wolf, silent and watchful at the edge of firelight, embodied the delicate balance between threat and partnership. The lessons humans learned from wolves extended into hunting, communication, and survival strategy. Packs of wolves demonstrated coordinated attacks, teaching early humans the effectiveness of teamwork. Wolves' acute senses of smell and hearing inspired humans to refine their own observation skills. Even the behaviors of young wolves, playful yet cautious, provided models for learning and risk assessment. Humans, always learning from their environment, incorporated these lessons into their own lives, enhancing both safety and hunting efficiency. Ultimately, the wolf at the edge of Firelight represents the duality of the Ice Age world, danger and opportunity coexisting, fear and understanding intertwined. Predators were not merely obstacles, they were catalysts shaping the intelligence, social structure, and survival skills of early humans. By observing, avoiding, and eventually cooperating with these creatures, humans learned lessons that would echo for millennia, forging a bond that would become one of the most enduring partnerships in history. In the harsh winters of the Ice Age, wolves were both mirror and mentor. They tested the limits of human courage and ingenuity, pressed clans to innovate and cooperate, and ultimately became allies that enhanced the chances of survival. Life was fragile, but the combination of intelligence, observation, and selective cooperation turned vulnerability into advantage. The glow of the fire kept humans warm, the walls of their shelters protected them, and at the edge of that light, the silent, watchful wolves reminded them that survival was a delicate dance between fear and understanding, predator and companion, cold and life. In the frozen expanse of the Ice Age, warmth was survival, and clothing was the first line of defense against the relentless cold. Cavemen did not have modern insulation or synthetic fibers. They had their wits, tools, and the raw materials nature provided. Hides, furs, and layered garments became essential extensions of the body, turning fragile humans into beings capable of enduring temperatures that could kill within hours. Clothing was not fashion, it was life. It was armor woven from ingenuity, patience, and intimate knowledge of the natural world. The first challenge was selection. Different animals provided different qualities of insulation. Mammoth hides offered thick protection against wind and snow, while reindeer furs provided warmth with lightweight flexibility. Wolves and foxes supplied soft inner layers, perfect for lining garments, while tougher hides were used for outer coverings to repel moisture and wind. Early humans quickly learned which materials were best for gloves, boots, robes, and head coverings. Every choice was deliberate. Each layer had a specific purpose in the ongoing struggle against cold. Preparation of these materials was as critical as choosing them. Raw hides had to be scraped clean of fat and hair, then softened through processes that include stretching, pounding, soaking, and rubbing with animal fats. Tanning techniques, primitive though they were, prevented hides from becoming stiff and brittle in freezing temperatures. Furs were carefully cured to retain natural insulating properties, and multiple layers were combined to maximize heat retention. Every step required skill, knowledge passed from one generation to the next, and a deep understanding of the material's properties. Sewing was a vital skill. Needles carved from bone or ivory were used to stitch hides together, often with sinew acting as thread. Stitches had to be tight enough to retain heat, but flexible enough to allow movement. Gloves, boots, and hoods required meticulous construction to protect the extremities, which were most vulnerable to frostbite. A poorly made garment could mean pain, loss of fingers or toes, or even death. In this way, clothing was both practical and life-saving, a constant negotiation between survival and human dexterity. Clothing extended beyond warmth. It was essential for mobility and hunting. Well-constructed boots allowed humans to traverse frozen rivers, snow-covered forests, and icy plains without injury. Layers could be adjusted during physical exertion, preventing overheating while maintaining insulation during rest. Garments also offer protection against predators, reducing exposure of skin and minimizing the risk of injury during encounters with wolves or other dangerous animals. In the Ice Age, clothing was not merely comfort. It was a tool for strategic survival. The design of clothing reflected an understanding of anatomy and environmental demands. Hoods and collars trapped heat near the head and neck, where the body lost the most warmth. Tunics, skirts, and leggings allowed for both insulation and mobility. Gloves and boots were often reinforced with additional layers or animal fat, offering resistance to cold, moisture, and abrasion. Even simple belts or straps had functional value, securing garments, carrying tools, or stabilizing layers against strong winds. Every garment was a carefully considered solution to the environmental challenge. Clothing also had social and symbolic dimensions. Certain furs or decorative patterns could indicate status, skill, or achievements within the clan. A skilled hunter might with a pelt of a dangerous prey, signaling courage and prowess. Children and elders had garments adapted to their vulnerabilities, reflecting the communal care essential for survival. Clothing, in this way, was a language of both protection and identity, intertwining function and culture in a single layer of survival. The constant threat of cold also led to innovation. Humans learned to combine furs, layer hides, and improvise with whatever materials were available. Animal fat was sometimes applied to clothing, creating a rudimentary waterproofing layer that prevented frost from forming on fabric and preserved body heat. Techniques like braiding, sewing, and weaving developed as humans experimented with ways to make garments more effective. Each adaptation increased survival odds and demonstrated human ingenuity in transforming raw resources into life-saving tools. The contrast between clothed and unclothed humans in the Ice Age was stark. Exposed skin froze quickly, and frostbite could disable or kill. Clothing allowed humans to endure extreme weather, extend hunting and gathering expeditions, and survive nights that would have been fatal. Garments were a shield against the cold, a medium for cooperation, as furs were shared, repaired, or handed down, and a canvas for early cultural expression. They were indispensable for life in a frozen world. Ultimately, clothing in the Ice Age was a testament to human ingenuity, foresight, and adaptability. Every stitch, layer, and combination of hides was an achievement born of necessity. Through clothing, fragile human bodies gained resilience, mobility, and protection. Through observation, experimentation, and craftsmanship, humans turned the coldest, most hostile environment into a realm they could survive. Furs and hides were more than survival tools. They were lifelines, representing the intelligence, creativity, and communal spirit that would define humanity for millennia. In the end, clothing against the cold was not simply about comfort. It was about life, protection, and endurance. It was an extension of strategy, a reflection of knowledge, and a symbol of humanity's ability to bend nature to its will. In the relentless winters of the Ice Age, clothing turned fragile, vulnerable humans into beings capable of thriving, exploring, and surviving where countless other species could not. In the Ice Age, night was more than darkness. It was a test of endurance. With the sun setting early and temperatures plunging far below freezing, the hours of darkness stretched long and merciless. Sleep, a basic human need, became a delicate balance between rest and survival. Too deep, and one risked hypothermia or predator attacks. Too light, and exhaustion sapped strength for the next day's hunt or journey. Humans learned to navigate these long nights with a combination of instinct, ingenuity, and the small comforts they could create in an otherwise hostile world. Shelters and fire were the foundation of sleep. Within caves, snow pits, or mammoth bone huts, humans crafted insulated sleeping areas, layering moss, leaves, and furs. The warmth from the fire extended beyond the immediate flames, seeping into bedding and bodies, creating pockets of survivable heat. The positioning of individuals was intentional. The young, elderly, and sick were placed closest to the fire, while stronger adults took outer positions, guarding the perimeter. Sleep was not merely rest. It was a communal act of survival, a strategy designed to maximize safety and conserve energy for the frozen day ahead. The psychology of sleep in the Ice Age was complex. Darkness brought fear as well as rest. The mind remained alert to the distant growl of predator, the crackle of shifting ice, or the whisper of wind through the shelter. Dreams may have served as rehearsal for danger, imagination intertwining with memory, to create mental simulations of hunting, defense, or escape. These nocturnal experiences could strengthen the mind, preparing humans for the unpredictable threats of survival in an environment that tolerated no error. Sleep itself was adapted to extreme conditions. Humans likely employed polyphasic patterns, resting in shorter, more frequent bouts rather than one long sleep, to maintain vigilance. Naps during the day supplemented nighttime rest, ensuring energy was conserved while minimizing vulnerability. The cold forced humans to stay active even during rest, turning movement, huddling, and proximity to fire into survival techniques embedded within the very act of sleeping. Every breath, every adjustment of position, every shared warmth contributed to endurance through the relentless night. Firelight shaped the transition from wakefulness to sleep. The flickering flames were more than illumination. They were markers of security, casting shadows that reassured and warned simultaneously. Families and clans would gather close, watching embers, tending flames, and sharing whispered stories. These stories served multiple purposes: entertainment, teaching cultural continuity and psychological reassurance. In the long darkness, fire was a boundary between life and death, and sleep was most profound when humans felt this protective circle around them. The struggle to stay warm during sleep influenced behavior, clothing, and shelter design. Humans curled into fetal positions to conserve heat, shared body warmth in tight clusters, and insulated themselves with layers of furs. Footwear and gloves were often worn even while resting, and bedding was regularly rotated to maintain warmth and dryness. These practices reflect a deep understanding of physiology, environmental challenges, and the social coordination required to survive long, cold nights. Sleep was both a personal and communal adaptation, blending instinct, intelligence, and cultural learning. Predators shaped sleep patterns as much as cold did. Wolves, cave lions, and other carnivores prowled near shelters, making vigilance necessary even during the most vulnerable hours. Some clans may have kept sentinels awake, passing watches to maintain safety while others rested. The long night was a negotiation with danger, teaching humans early lessons about risk management, alertness, and strategic planning. Sleep was never a luxury. It was an intricate dance with survival, one that required both instinct and learned behavior. Dreams may have had deeper significance beyond rehearsal. Anthropologists suggest that early humans imbued dreams with meaning, interpreting them as omens, guidance, or communication with ancestors and spirits. The long hours of darkness provided fertile ground for imagination, memory, and cultural development. Stories told before sleep could shape dreams, embedding lessons of caution, courage, and cooperation. In this sense, the Ice Age night nurtured not only physical survival but the mental and cultural evolution of humanity. The long night also fostered bonding and social cohesion. Huddled together, humans shared warmth, whispered stories, and passed down knowledge. Infants were comforted, the elderly reassured, and skills reinforced through oral instruction. Sleep became a shared experience, a time when vulnerability was mitigated through community. In these nights, the foundations of human culture, storytelling, ritual, teaching, and cooperation were reinforced, turning basic rest into a profound tool for survival. Ultimately, the Ice Age night was both enemy and teacher. Darkness brought cold, predators, and uncertainty, but also encouraged adaptation, ingenuity, and social cohesion. Sleep was a strategic act, a negotiation with the environment, and a moment of preparation for the trials of the frozen day. Dreams, firelight, huddling, and vigilance combined to transform vulnerability into resilience. Through the long night, humans learned the essential lesson that survival depended not only on strength or intelligence, but on the ability to adapt, cooperate, and endure when the world pressed in from every side. In the endless hours of darkness, the human spirit persisted. Sleep, one simple rest, became an art of survival. Fire, shelter, clothing, vigilance, and social bonds converged to protect life and sustain hope. The long night tested bodies and minds alike, and in its harsh embrace, humans refined the skills, instincts, and social structures that would carry the species forward. In the Ice Age, every night survived was a victory, a step toward mastering the world in the long, frozen nights that once threatened extinction itself. In the long, dark winters of the Ice Age, survival depended not only on physical strength, skill, and ingenuity, but also on the intangible threads of culture, ritual, and belief. As temperatures plunged and nights stretched endlessly, fire became more than a source of warmth. It became the center of social life, a beacon of safety, and a stage for storytelling that carried lessons, hope, and collective identity. Around the fire, early humans wove rituals that reinforced cohesion, transmitted knowledge, and nurtured the psychological resilience necessary to endure harsh winters. Stories told by firelight were more than entertainment. They were survival tools. Tales of successful hunts, encounters with predators, and lessons learned from previous winters allowed knowledge to be shared across generations. Children absorbed techniques for tracking prey, identifying edible plants, and crafting tools, while adults reinforced strategic thinking and memory of past challenges. Storytelling became a dynamic repository of practical wisdom, encoded in engaging narratives that made learning both memorable and emotionally resonant. The flickering shadows on cave walls, cast by dancing flames, transformed mundane gatherings into immersive experiences. Figures of hunters, mammoths, and wolves seemed to come alive, blending imagination with reality. This interplay of firelight and shadow not only stimulated creativity, but also reinforced lessons of vigilance and cooperation. Humans learned to anticipate danger, understand predator behavior, and visualize the steps of a hunt, all within the safe confines of communal fire. In this way, ritual and learning merged seamlessly. Firelight rituals extended beyond storytelling. Early humans appear to have engaged in symbolic acts around the fire, dancing, chanting, or gesturing, that fostered unity and strengthened the social fabric. These rituals may have provided psychological protection, creating a shared sense of control over an unpredictable environment. The repetition of gestures, rhythms, and stories reinforced memory, teaching, and community cohesion. Firelight became a sacred space where life, death, and survival intertwined, where humans exercised both imagination and intellect to navigate the perils of winter. Winter also demanded ceremonies that acknowledged the natural world and its dangers. Evidence from cave art suggests that early humans may have performed rituals to honor prey, invoke animal spirits, or seek protection from predators. Mammoths, bison, wolves, and other creatures often appeared in paintings and carvings, hinting at beliefs that intertwined survival with reverence. These rituals were more than superstition. They provided structure, meaning, and emotional support in an environment where life was fragile and uncertain. Through ritual, humans could express hope, channel fear, and assert agency over forces beyond their control. Sharing food around the fire was itself a ritual act. Meat, fat, and gathered plants were distributed according to need and hierarchy, reinforcing social bonds and ensuring survival. Elders, children, and the sick were given priority, while hunters were rewarded for their contributions. These practices reflected cooperation, fairness, and communal responsibility. Food rituals fostered trust, maintained morale, and demonstrated that survival depended not solely on individual skill, but on collective effort and mutual support. The ritual of preparing and maintaining fire was equally significant. Fire was life, and its care demanded attention, skill, and coordination. Clans would designate individuals to tend flames, stoke embers, and preserve sparks for days of snow and storm. The act of keeping fire alive became a symbolic representation of human perseverance and ingenuity. It reinforced the notion that life would be sustained through intelligence, diligence, and cooperation, a lesson as vital as any taught in stories or ceremonies. Belief systems emerging from winter rituals shaped identity and cohesion. Firelight gatherings created a shared space where myths, dreams, and lessons converged. They established a sense of order in a chaotic world, connecting humans to one another and to the broader environment. Rituals around fire were incubators of culture, the crucible in which the earliest expressions of morality, social norms, and collective memory were forged. In these practices, humans not only survived, they thrived psychologically, socially, and spiritually. The contrasts of winter life were vividly embodied in these rituals. Outside, blizzards raged, predators prowled, and cold threatened life. Inside, firelight offered warmth, security, and social cohesion. Stories, songs, and dances transformed fear into understanding, isolation into community. Rituals bridged the gap between vulnerability and resilience, between danger and human ingenuity. They created spaces where humans could confront mortality, celebrate survival, and instill hope for the long nights ahead. Ultimately, winter rituals were a cornerstone of survival. They were not merely cultural expressions, but essential strategies for enduring the harshest conditions. Storytelling, symbolic acts, firekeeping, and communal gatherings nurtured knowledge, cohesion, and mental fortitude. Through these practices, early humans transformed the bleakness of winter into a framework of learning, culture, and shared identity. Firelight became a sanctuary, ritual a lifeline, and the long winter nights a canvas for human ingenuity, imagination, and resilience. In the frozen world of the Ice Age, rituals were as crucial as shelters, clothing, and food. They sustained the mind, reinforced the clan, and provided meaning in a reality dominated by cold, darkness, and danger. Firelight, stories, and ceremonies remind us that survival was never purely physical. It was a holistic endeavor encompassing body, mind, and spirit. In these rituals, the human story takes shape, illuminating how culture and belief emerged alongside the struggle for life, forging the foundations of resilience that would define humanity for millennia. For Ice Age humans, survival was not just a matter of skill or ingenuity in one place. It was a matter of mobility. Winter transformed the landscape into a frozen labyrinth of scarcity. Rivers iced over, forests retreated under snow, and the familiar abundance of summer vanished. To endure, clans had to move, tracking the herds of prey that sustained them. Migration was not random wandering. It was a calculated strategy shaped by knowledge, observation, and instinct. Following the animals meant following life itself. Herds of mammoths, reindeer, bison, and other large mammals dictated human movement. These animals traveled in predictable patterns, responding to vegetation cycles, seasonal temperatures, and predator pressure. Humans learned to read the landscape for signs of migration: footprints in snow, broken branches, remnants of feeding, and droppings. Each track told a story, a map of survival etched into frozen terrain. Observing and interpreting these signs required patience, memory, and intimate understanding of the natural world. A misread track could lead a clan astray, leaving them hungry, exposed, and vulnerable to predators. The logistics of migration were complex. Clans carried food, tools, and children across icy plains, rivers, and forests. Shelters, often portable, had to be dismantled, transported, and reassembled. Fires needed to be recreated in new locations, while hunting strategies had to adapt to unfamiliar terrain. Every journey demanded planning, foresight, and collaboration. Movement itself became a ritual of survival, a deliberate choreography that balanced risk, reward, and endurance. Migration was also a social endeavor. Clans had to coordinate roles and responsibilities. Hunters scouted ahead, gatherers searched for edible plants, and elders oversaw safety and knowledge transfer. Children observed, learning routes, behaviors, and survival strategies for the seasons ahead. Shared effort was essential. In extreme weather, cooperation became the difference between life and death. The act of moving together reinforced cohesion, strengthened trust, and nurtured the social intelligence necessary for enduring the harsh winters. The dangers of migration were numerous. Exposure to the elements was constant. Frostbite, hypothermia, and exhaustion threatened even the most experienced individuals. Predators followed herds, meaning humans often moved through landscapes already contested by wolves, bears, and other carnivores. Additionally, terrain itself could be perilous. Thin ice over rivers, hidden crevices, and sudden snowdrifts all posed life-threatening obstacles. Every step required attention, and every day brought decisions that could spell survival or disaster. Yet following the herds offered rewards that outweighed the risks. Large animals provided meat, fat, hides, and bones, critical resources for winter survival. By moving with the herds, humans maintained access to these essential supplies. The predictability of animal behavior allowed early humans to plan hunts, allocate food, and preserve resources for the most critical months. Migration was not just physical movement. It was a strategic lifeline, a dance with nature orchestrated through observation, knowledge, and foresight. These journeys also encouraged innovation and adaptation. Tools, clothing, and shelter designs evolved to meet the demands of constant movement. Portable fire-starting techniques, compact bedding systems, and versatile clothing allowed humans to survive in varied conditions. Hunters developed tracking methods, ambush strategies, and communication signals optimized for mobility. Migration catalyzed creativity, turning necessity into innovation and transforming challenges into solutions that would define human ingenuity for generations. Psychologically, movement through winter landscapes shaped human perception and culture. The vast icy plains, endless forests, and towering mountains instilled both awe and caution. Stories, songs, and rituals often reflected these journeys, encoding lessons about routes, danger, and animal behavior. Migration became a narrative in itself, a seasonal saga connecting survival with myth, observation with imagination. Each journey reinforced cultural memory, passed down through generations as both practical knowledge and shared identity. Migration also strengthened the bonds between humans and their environment. By following the herds, humans gained intimate knowledge of ecosystems, animal behavior, and seasonal changes. They learned which valleys offered shelter, which rivers were dangerous, and which plains teemed with prey. Humans became deeply attuned to the rhythms of the natural world, developing an early form of ecological intelligence. The movement of clan was therefore not only survival-driven, but also an education in the subtle interplay between life, death, and environment. Ultimately, Winter migration exemplifies the adaptability and foresight of early humans. Life in one place was never guaranteed. The cold, scarcity, and predators demanded mobility. Following the herds was both a necessity and a strategy, a way to synchronize human activity with the natural cycles that govern survival. Through careful observation, planning, and cooperation, humans transformed an inhospitable landscape into a network of opportunities, turning each journey into both a lifeline and a lesson in endurance. The contrast between stillness and movement was profound. Remaining in one place could mean starvation or predation, while movement promised sustenance but demanded energy, coordination, and courage. Winter migration was a delicate balance between risk and reward, danger and necessity. Through these journeys, early humans honed their intelligence, reinforced social bonds, and ensured continuity of life through one of the harshest climates in history. In the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, migration was survival in motion. Each step, track, and path followed the pulse of life itself. Humans move with purpose, observation, and skill, transforming perilous environments into navigable territory. In these movements, the ingenuity, resilience, and adaptability of early humans shine most clearly, lessons that echo through time, reminding us that survival often requires not just strength, but foresight, cooperation, and profound understanding of the world around us. In the harsh winters of the Ice Age, survival depended not only on individual skill, but also on the strength of the clan. Early humans were small, fragile creatures facing enormous environmental pressures, from freezing temperatures to predators and scarce resources. Individual survival was nearly impossible. Only through cooperation, shared knowledge, and division of labor could a group endure. Family and clan structures became the foundation of life, creating social bonds that transformed vulnerability into resilience. The clan was the basic unit of survival. It consisted of hunters, gatherers, elders, children, and those unable to participate in direct subsistence activities. Each member had roles carefully adapted to their abilities. Hunters pursued game across frozen plains and dense forests, employing knowledge, strategy, and teamwork to secure food. Gatherers collected edible plants, roots, and berries were available, supplementing diets when prey was scarce. Elders preserved knowledge of migration patterns, animal behavior, and tool-making techniques, while children learned through observation and participation, gradually acquiring the skills needed to survive independently. Division of labor was essential. Tasks were distributed to maximize efficiency and minimize risk. Men and women often specialized based on physical capacity, but adaptability was key. Anyone capable might be called upon to assist in hunting, fire maintenance, or shelter construction. This cooperation ensured that no single failure, injury, illness, or misjudgment would jeopardize the entire group. Survival depended on trust, coordination, and shared responsibility, making social cohesion as critical as fire or clothing. The clan was also a protective network. In freezing temperatures, individuals huddled together to share warmth. Sleep arrangements were designed strategically. The young, old, and infirm were placed near the fire or at the center of sleeping clusters, while stronger members formed an outer protective circle. Sentinels took turns keeping watch, balancing rest with vigilance against predators. These practices reflect a sophisticated understanding of human physiology, social dynamics, and environmental hazards, demonstrating that cooperation was embedded in both daily routines and survival strategies. Communication within the clan was vital. Early humans developed gestures, sounds, and rudimentary language to coordinate activities, warn of danger, and share knowledge. Signals might indicate the presence of prey, predators, or safe routes during migration. Storytelling reinforced these lessons, embedding practical information in narratives that could be remembered and transmitted across generations. Communication strengthened both strategy and social bonds, making the clan a unified organism in the face of environmental threats. The emotional dimension of clan life was equally important. Cold, hunger, and fear created high-stress conditions, and psychological resilience depended on support networks. Huddling together, sharing food, and passing on knowledge fostered trust, reassurance, and a sense of security. Rituals, stories, and communal activities strengthen identity and cohesion, transforming a group of vulnerable individuals into a coordinated, emotionally resilient unit capable of facing the harshest winters. Family and clan life also facilitated learning and cultural transmission. Children observed hunting, tool-making, and shelter construction, absorbing skills critical for their survival. Elders and experienced hunters shared stories that encoded strategies, environmental knowledge, and social norms. These transmissions were not static. Each generation refined techniques, improved tools, and adapted behaviors to changing climates and predator patterns. Survival depended on this continuous cycle of observation, practice, and cultural memory. Conflicts within the clan were inevitable, but managed with a combination of hierarchy, ritual, and cooperation. Leaders often emerged based on skill, experience, or age, guiding decision-making and resolving disputes. Shared dependence on survival created incentives for compromise and collaboration. In this environment, social intelligence, negotiation, empathy, and coordination was as critical as physical strength, reinforcing the idea that human success in winter was as much a product of society as of individual capability. The clan also provided a platform for innovation. Collaborative problem-solving led to advances in tools, clothing, hunting strategies, and shelter design. Collective memory preserved successes and failures, allowing lessons learned in one harsh winter to inform future strategies. In this way, family and clan life functioned as a crucible of adaptation, knowledge, and creativity, accelerating human progress in ways that solitary survival could never achieve. Even the simple act of eating was imbued with strategy and ritual. Food was shared according to need and contribution, ensuring that children and elders received sustenance and that hunters and gatherers were rewarded for their labor. These systems reinforced fairness, strengthened bonds, and enhanced morale, demonstrating that cooperation was not only practical but also culturally embedded. Every meal became a reaffirmation of social cohesion, trust, and collective survival. Ultimately, family and clan life were the backbone of Ice Age survival. The harsh winter landscapes, predator threats, and scarcity of resources demanded that humans operate not as isolated individuals, but as interconnected networks of skill, knowledge, and care. Cooperation amplified resilience, distributed risk, and enabled adaptation in ways that single humans could not achieve. Social bonds transformed vulnerability into strength, fear into strategy, and isolation into security. The contrast is stark. A lone human in the icy wilderness faced almost certain death, while a coordinated clan could thrive, migrate, hunt, and survive. Family and clan structures exemplified the power of collective intelligence, emotional support, and cultural transmission. They were both survival strategy and social invention, shaping not only how humans endured winter, but also how they evolved, learned, and laid the foundations for the complex societies that would follow. In the coldest, darkest winters, the clan was more than a social unit. It was a lifeline. Through cooperation, shared knowledge, and mutual care, early humans transformed the Ice Age from an environment of constant threat into a landscape navigable with skill, intelligence, and community. In every huddle group, every shared meal, every coordinated hunt, the seeds of human society and resilience were being sown, proving that survival is not solely about the individual, but about the strength of the family, the clan, and the collective human spirit. The Ice Age was a world of extremes, where survival was a constant negotiation with danger. Every day, early humans faced threats from multiple fronts: the lethal precision of predators, the scarcity of food during long winters, and the invisible yet devastating presence of disease. Life was precarious, and every choice, from when to hunt to where to shelter, could tip the balance between survival and death. Understanding these threats and developing strategies to mitigate them was central to the story of human endurance. Predators were perhaps the most immediate threat. Wolves, bears, cave lions, and hyenas prowled the same landscapes, competing for the same resources and viewing humans as both competitors and prey. A single misstep, leaving a fire unattended, straying too far from shelter, or misjudging distance, could invite fatal encounters. Humans responded with vigilance, strategic use of fire, weapons, and protective formations, but danger was never fully eliminated. Predator pressure shaped human behavior, encouraging mobility, cooperation, and constant alertness. These encounters honed survival instincts and taught early humans to respect the power and cunning of the natural world. Starvation was another omnipresent threat. Winter drastically reduced the availability of edible plants, forcing humans to rely heavily on hunting and stored provisions. Even successful hunts carried risk, as large prey could be dangerous to take down, and failure could leave entire clans hungry. Food scarcity required careful planning. Preserved meat, fat, and hidden caches became essential lifelines. Humans learned to ration, to prioritize the young and infirm, and to track seasonal migrations of prey with precision. Starvation was not only a physical challenge. It demanded foresight, strategy, and cooperation to avoid the slow and agonizing consequences of hunger. Disease, though invisible, was equally deadly. In cramped shelters, shared sleeping arrangements, and constant contact with animals, pathogens could spread quickly. Wounds from hunting or fighting could become infected, and malnutrition weakened immune responses. Early humans likely developed rudimentary hygiene practices, such as cleaning wounds, rotating sleeping areas, and separating the sick, even if the mechanisms were instinctual rather than scientific. Surviving disease required observation, knowledge passed through generations, and an intuitive understanding of the body's vulnerabilities. Every illness was a test of resilience, knowledge, and communal care. The combination of these threats created an environment of relentless challenge. Predators, hunger, and disease rarely came in isolation. Often, one threat amplified the others. A sick individual was slower and more vulnerable to predators. Hunger weakened the body, increasing susceptibility to cold and infection. These interconnected dangers demanded holistic strategies, integrating tool use, clothing, shelter, fire, mobility, and social cooperation. Survival was not a single act. It was a continuous, adaptive process requiring intelligence, coordination, and vigilance at every level. Humans responded to these threats with ingenuity. Weapons such as spears, bows, and clubs allowed hunting while minimizing risk. Portable shelters and insulated clothing mitigated exposure to cold and predators. Fire provided warmth, light, and deterrence. Food preservation techniques, like drying or smoking meat, extended the shelf life of vital nutrients. Each innovation reduced vulnerability and increased the odds of survival, demonstrating the interplay between observation, creativity, and necessity in human evolution. Threats also shaped social behavior. Clans developed systems to distribute risk and resources. Sentinels kept watch while others slept. Hunting groups coordinated attacks on large prey, and elders guided decisions based on accumulated knowledge. Social cohesion became a survival strategy. Conflict resolution, sharing, and leadership structures emerged as practical necessities to navigate a world where mistakes could be fatal. Early humans learned that cooperation, rather than solitary effort, was essential for mitigating threats that no single individual could confront alone. Psychologically, the presence of constant danger shaped perception, cognition, and emotional resilience. Humans learned to recognize subtle signs of predators, to anticipate scarcity, and to assess risk with remarkable accuracy. Fear became a tool for survival, driving vigilance and strategic planning rather than paralyzing action. Dreams, rituals, and stories reinforced these lessons, embedding knowledge about predators, safe routes, and successful strategies into collective memory. The mind became as essential a tool as any spear or fire, shaping responses to both immediate threats and long-term challenges. Environmental hazards further amplified the risks. Blizzards, avalanches, thin ice, and treacherous terrain created conditions where missteps could be fatal. Predators often took advantage of these hazards, and weakened humans were more vulnerable to both natural and animal threats. Survival required not only physical skill, but acute situational awareness, flexibility, and quick adaptation. Humans became adept at reading landscapes, predicting animal movements, and identifying safe zones, turning knowledge of the environment into a defensive mechanism. Despite these dangers, humans endured. Survival was never guaranteed, but intelligence, observation, innovation, and cooperation transformed vulnerability into resilience. Predators taught caution and strategy. Scarcity demanded foresight and resourcefulness, and disease prompted hygiene and care. These pressures forged adaptability, creativity, and social cohesion, qualities that would define humanity for millennia. Every threat faced, every challenge overcome, strengthened both individuals and clans, creating a legacy of survival against overwhelming odds. In the frozen and perilous world of the Ice Age, threats were omnipresent, yet humans persisted. The contrast between fragility and resilience, danger and ingenuity, death and life, defined the human experience. Predators prowled, Food was scarce, and disease lurked unseen, yet communities survived, adapted, and thrived. Ice Age threats, once barriers to existence, became catalysts for innovation, cooperation, and cultural development, illustrating the profound capacity of humans to endure even in the harshest conditions imaginable. Through predators, starvation, and disease, humans honed every aspect of survival, body, mind, and social structure. These threats shaped the rhythm of daily life, the design of tools and shelters, and the moral and cultural codes of early communities. Life in the Ice Age was never easy, but it was in navigating these threats that humanity discovered the essence of ingenuity, courage, and resilience, the qualities that would allow the species not merely to survive, but ultimately to thrive. As the Ice Age recedes into history, the echoes of its winters continue to shape humanity. The people who endured those harsh, frozen landscapes were more than survivors. They were innovators, teachers, and pioneers of adaptation. Every fire they built, every hunt they planned, every story told around a glow of embers contributed to a legacy that would echo across millennia. The lessons of endurance, ingenuity, and social cohesion became embedded in the human story, forming a foundation for civilization itself. One of the most enduring legacies is the development of intelligence in response to extreme environmental pressures. Early humans were forced to observe, analyze, and adapt to survive in a world where miscalculations could mean death. Tracking prey, interpreting animal behavior, and anticipating weather patterns required acute attention to detail, memory, and foresight. These cognitive skills laid the groundwork for strategic thinking, problem-solving, and planning, abilities that continue to define the human species. The Ice Age, with all its dangers, acted as a crucible in which the mind was honed to extraordinary precision. Innovation emerged as another defining legacy. Tools, clothing, shelters, and hunting techniques were refined through necessity. Spears and bows were perfected for efficiency, furs and hides for warmth, and fire for both protection and community cohesion. Portable shelters, food preservation methods, and migration strategies were developed to endure scarcity and cold. These innovations were not isolated achievements. They were cumulative, passed down, adapted, and improved with each generation. The ingenuity cultivated in response to Ice Age challenges became a hallmark of human survival and progress. Social cohesion and cooperation were equally vital. Survival demanded collaboration, trust, and mutual care. Clans developed systems to share resources, rotate responsibilities, and protect the vulnerable. These practices reinforced social bonds, created shared knowledge, and nurtured cultural continuity. The strength of early human societies was rooted in their ability to work together, to transform individual vulnerability into collective resilience. The lessons of cooperation extend beyond the Ice Age. They form the basis of human social structures, governance, and community life even today. Storytelling and ritual, forged in the long, cold nights, left a profound cultural imprint. Tales of hunts, encounters with predators, and winter challenges were woven into collective memory, transmitting knowledge, morality, and identity across generations. Firelight became a classroom, stage, and sanctuary, shaping imagination, reinforcing social norms, and fostering psychological resilience. Rituals provide emotional balance, structure, and a sense of meaning in a world governed by danger and scarcity. These early cultural practices illustrate how humans combine survival with creativity, laying the foundation for art, religion, and shared identity. The human relationship with the environment also evolved during this period. Observing predators, tracking prey, and responding to seasonal changes developed a deep ecological awareness. Early humans learned to read landscapes, anticipate animal behavior, and utilize natural resources efficiently. This intimate knowledge of ecosystems ensured survival and established patterns of interaction with nature that would influence human society long after the Ice Age. Adaptation was not merely reactive. It involved understanding, predicting, and integrating with the rhythms of the natural world. Another critical lesson is resilience, the ability to endure hardship without surrendering. Ice Age humans faced constant threats: bitter cold, starvation, predators, disease, and environmental instability. Yet through intelligence, cooperation, and creativity, they adapted to conditions that would overwhelm most species. Resilience became embedded in both physiology and culture, shaping not only survival but also the human capacity to innovate and evolve. The hardships of the Ice Age taught that survival depended not only on immediate responses, but on long-term planning, flexibility, and the ability to learn from each challenge. Migration and mobility, refined during the Ice Age, left a lasting impact. Humans learned to track herds, navigate frozen landscapes, and adjust their strategies according to environmental cues. These skills ensured access to food, safety, and resources, while fostering cultural exchange and knowledge transmission between clans. The mobility of early humans laid the groundwork for future exploration, trade, and the spread of human populations across continents. Movement became both a survival strategy and a mechanism for cultural and technological diffusion. Predator encounters left psychological and social lessons as well. Fear, vigilance, and strategic thinking became essential survival traits, shaping cognition and social behavior. Early humans learned to interpret danger, plan collective responses, and develop communication systems to warn others. Predators acted as teachers, forcing humans to refine intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability. The lessons from these encounters echo through history, reminding us that challenges, even threats, can catalyze growth and innovation. The Ice Age also nurtured creativity. Cave art, ritualistic practices, and symbolic storytelling emerged as ways to process experience, encode knowledge, and foster community cohesion. These cultural expressions were intertwined with survival, bridging the practical and the imaginative. Humans learned to transform fear into understanding, isolation into connection, and hardship into cultural continuity. This blend of pragmatism and creativity will become a defining feature of humanity. Finally, the Ice Age teaches the interconnectedness of survival strategies. Clothing, fire, tools, social cohesion, migration, and ritual were not isolated. They formed a web of adaptations, each supporting the other. Intelligence, ingenuity, and social bonds amplified human capability, creating a system in which life could persist even in extreme conditions. The legacy of the Ice Age is a realization that survival is holistic, requiring integration of mind, body, society, and environment. In reflection, the legacy of Ice Age survival is more than endurance. It is a story of human ingenuity, creativity, and adaptability. Lessons learned in frozen landscapes shape cognition, culture, cooperation, and ecological awareness. Firelight, storytelling, migration, and innovation became intertwined with the human spirit, leaving a mark that resonates in every aspect of civilization today. The Ice Age reminds us that humanity thrives not simply by confronting challenges, but by observing, learning, cooperating, and adapting. The enduring message is clear. Survival is multifaceted. It requires intelligence, social cohesion, innovation, resilience, and a deep understanding of the natural world. Ice Age humans exemplify the profound capacity of our species to endure, adapt, and transform adversity into opportunity. Their legacy is not only in the genes they pass down, but in the culture, strategies, and wisdom that continue to define humanity. Through the lessons of the Ice Age, we see the remarkable capacity of humans to survive, evolve, and shape the world around them. As the Ice Age receded and the world warmed, the frozen landscapes that once tested humanity's endurance began to transform. Glaciers melted, rivers swelled, and forests reclaimed the plains. Yet, the lessons forged in relentless winters endured long after the snow disappeared. The ingenuity, resilience, and social cohesion honed in those harsh conditions left echoes that shaped the trajectory of human history. The struggles of Ice Age humans were not merely survival stories. They were the foundation of the human spirit. The epilogue of the Ice Age is written not in monuments or cities, but in the adaptations, culture, and knowledge that persisted. Clothing, fire, and shelter evolved into more sophisticated forms, yet the fundamental principles remain the same. Observe the environment, use available resources wisely, and work together to overcome challenges. Migration strategies became early patterns for exploration and settlement, allowing humans to expand across continents. The knowledge of predator behavior, seasonal cycles, and ecological systems informed generations, creating a continuity that bridged millennia. Cultural practices born in winter survival, storytelling, ritual, and communal gatherings became enduring pillars of human society. Around the fire, humans not only shared warmth but also passed down wisdom, ethics, and identity. These narratives embedded practical survival skills alongside lessons about cooperation, courage, and resilience. In every story, every ritual, and every repeated gesture, the human mind learned to process danger, cultivate social bonds, and nurture imagination. Firelight illuminated more than caves. It illuminated the path of human cultural evolution. The biological and cognitive adaptations of Ice Age humans also left lasting impacts. Endurance, acute observation, problem-solving, and social intelligence became traits that enhanced survival in subsequent environments. Humans learned to balance risk with reward, to anticipate scarcity, and to innovate under pressure. These traits underpin not only physical survival, but also the ability to build complex societies, develop agriculture, and eventually transform the planet. The Ice Age, harsh as it was, shaped both the body and mind in ways that continue to define humanity. In reflecting on these echoes, we see that survival is more than enduring the present. It is about preparing for the future. Ice Age humans were not merely reacting to threats. They were learning, teaching, and adapting. Each fire tended, each hunt executed, and each story told contributed to a legacy of knowledge and resilience. This continuous cycle of adaptation is at the core of human development, showing how our species turns challenge into opportunity and danger into growth. The epilogue also highlights the interplay between vulnerability and strength. Ice Age humans were small, fragile, and exposed, yet they accomplished extraordinary feats. They transformed landscapes into habitable spaces, tamed fire, crafted tools, and built societies based on trust, cooperation, and shared knowledge. The contrast between their physical fragility and the power of collective intelligence underscores the unique capability of humans to transcend environmental limitations. Strength was not merely muscle. It was strategy, ingenuity, and unity. Even today, the echoes of Ice Age survival resonate in modern life. Clothing, fire, shelter, social networks, and cultural storytelling trace their roots to the strategies developed during those frozen winters. Lessons about resourcefulness, vigilance, and collaboration remain relevant, reminding us that human ingenuity and cooperation have always been central to thriving in a challenging world. The Ice Age serves as both history and metaphor. Survival demands adaptation, community, and creativity. The psychological legacy is equally profound. Ice Age humans cultivated patience, foresight, and emotional resilience. The long nights, constant threats, and harsh winters trained minds to anticipate danger, plan for scarcity, and value social bonds. Rituals, stories, and shared knowledge nurtured mental fortitude, turning fear and uncertainty into strategy and cohesion. These lessons in psychology and social intelligence remain essential elements of human society, underlying our capacity to navigate complex challenges even in the modern era. Nature, which once tested survival at every turn, remains a teacher. Ice Age humans learned to read landscapes, interpret animal behavior, and anticipate seasonal cycles. They discovered that observing and understanding the environment was as critical as physical endurance. Today, these principles inform our approach to ecology, conservation, and sustainability. The legacy of Ice Age survival is not only cultural and biological, but also ecological, a deep awareness of the interdependence between humans and the natural world. The ultimate lesson of the Ice Age is the enduring power of resilience. Harsh winters, predators, scarcity, and disease tested every aspect of life, yet humans prevailed. Through adaptation, cooperation, innovation, and culture, early humans transformed challenges into opportunity for growth. The echoes of this resilience continue to shape human identity, reflecting a species capable of surviving and thriving through adversity, ingenuity, and collective effort. In conclusion, the Ice Age may be long gone, but its imprint on humanity is permanent. Every technological innovation, every cultural practice, and every social strategy carries the mark of those frozen winters. Fire, clothing, migration, clan cohesion, storytelling, and ritual are not relics. They are living legacies, reminders of what humans can achieve when challenged by the extremes of nature. The echoes of Ice Age survival continue to inspire, teaching us that resilience, intelligence, and cooperation are timeless keys to enduring the trials of the world.